Chapter 31, Question 1. Which of the following people are counted as unemployed? It's just the person who is out of work and is actively searching for a job. If you give up searching for a job, you're not considered unemployed, and the person with part-time already has a job part-time. In question 2, according to figure 30.1, what adults are considered to be in labor force? So the adults that are not in labor force are students, people who stay home, are homemakers, retired people, and some other people that are concerned. And if we consider discouraged workers who like don't search for jobs even though they don't have a job, the unemployment rate would increase, but it wouldn't necessarily double. Types of unemployment: there's frictional, structural, and cynical unemployment. The first case is cynical unemployment. The economy is getting worse, so the General Motors shuts down the factory. Uh, B is a structural unemployment. They're laying off workers. They're building their structure of their company. You can think about that way. And the part of C is just a frictional unemployment. 5. The minimum wage is the definition of it is considered the lowest price we can pay for a worker. Therefore, a minimum wage would be a price floor, so it's above equilibrium. Therefore, there will be a surplus in the labor market.
Hello and welcome to this lab. Question 6 asked, in France, why do employment protection laws tend to have negative effects on the young, already unemployed, and minority workers? So let's answer this question. So this is due to the rigidity of French employment. So essentially hiring foreign workers is more risky for French employers than hiring French workers who have experience. Essentially, this comes down to the familiarity of French employers with the candidates and the risk. Because it's so hard to fire and hire employees, French employers are very particular on who they hire, and this can increase the risk of hiring a bad candidate. So they're very wary of hiring minority workers. Question 7 asked, using figure 30.7, identify whether the unemployment rate peaks during or after a recession. So as we can see, unemployment usually peaks right after a recession ends. We can see that in this example of the recession in 1982, we can see that unemployment dramatically increases to the point where it reaches a peak right at the end of the recession, because right at the end of the recession is where essentially the economy has reached a total low point. After that point, the economy starts to build and unemployment drops. However, that is at the very end of a recession once the economy has dropped to a level of essentially total collapse. Using figure 30.10, identify which period had the highest rate of natural unemployment. We can see this red line showing the data trend for natural rate of unemployment. And we can answer this question by saying that the period is 1975 through 1985. This is most likely due to the energy crisis and unemployment caused by the oil embargo placed by OPEC on the United States. And we can see that the natural rate of unemployment hits a maximum point essentially from 1975 to 1985. It is pretty constant throughout time though. Finally, question 9 asked, using figure 30.12, identify the disparity in elderly male employment between countries with high and low implicit tax rates. So we can see that the countries with the highest implicit tax rates include European countries like Belgium, Italy, the Netherlands, and France, whereas the lowest implicit tax rate is in the country of Japan. And there's a 40% difference. This 40% labor force participation rate is in the European bloc versus an 80% labor participation force rate in Japan. Now this is due to basically incentives to leave the workforce in Europe. So essentially there is taxes on working in European countries like Belgium, Italy, the Netherlands, and France. Whereas in Japan, elderly workers are encouraged to be part of the market and encouraged to work. Essentially, my idea is this is because of Japan's very aging population, and also the tax rates in the Netherlands and France and Belgium and Italy essentially hurt their economy because they're incentivizing people to leave the workforce and to get out. So, but we can see this 40% difference in labor.
So question 10 asked, based on the ideas in this chapter, name 3 labor market policy changes that would be likely to decrease the rate of structural unemployment. So the first one I chose is less unemployment benefits, then lower minimum wage, and legalizing employment at will doctrine so that companies can fire employees whenever they want. Question 11 asks, when the following events happen, does the unemployment rate rise, fall, or stay the same? So when workers are laid off and start looking for work, it rises. On the flip side, when people without jobs who are looking for work find work, it falls. When people without jobs and looking for work give up and stop looking, it falls. When people without jobs and not looking for work become encouraged and decide to start looking for work, it rises. And when people without jobs and not looking for work take a job immediately, it stays the same. So question 12 asks, let's see how many jobs have to be destroyed for one net job to be created. Suppose 5 million jobs are destroyed every month and 5.25 million are created. So the net job creation would be the amount that is created minus destroyed, so that's 0.25 million jobs. The total job destruction divided by this net job creation would be 20 million jobs, so therefore 20 million jobs need to be destroyed for every net job created. Question 13 asks, when a government raises the minimum wage by $2 per hour, where would we expect more jobs to be lost? In the fast food industry or city government? So more jobs will be lost in the fast food industry because they pay more workers minimum wage than the city government does. Therefore, since the city government already pays above minimum wage, it would be less affected by the higher minimum wage and would have to lay off less workers.
So for question number 14, it's just a simple matter of division to figure out all of these rates. And so you've got your unemployment rates for each one, and then your labor force participation rate, which you find by taking the population over the total people in the labor force. With question number 15, because these people who previously didn't qualify for disability were considered in the labor force, and once they start receiving disability payments, they are considered out of the labor force, there will be a decrease in the unemployment rate. With question number 16, as you can see with this nifty little graph, 16 to 19-year-olds are predominantly in school, so their employment increases during the summer months and then drops off as back to school starts. And so basically during the month of July, you'll see a peak, except excluding 2020, of 40 to 45%, and then you'll see it dip off, except again in 2020, to around a drop of 10 to 13% during those school year months. And with question number 17, when you're looking at the U1 through U6, in 2010, the U6 had the highest with 17.2%, and the U1 had the lowest at 5.9. If we're using the U3 as the measure of what's considered correct, then I guess you would say that the U6 is really incorrect, and that the U1 and 2 are also incorrect because they're both significantly off, with the U6 being higher and the U3 and the U1 and 2 being lower. But they could potentially be a little more accurate measures depending on what you're looking for with unemployment. And then with part B, the rates all, as you can see, consistently move together. So if you're just trying to talk about whether the unemployment rate is increasing or decreasing, you could just use any which one of the graphs. If you're looking for a specific number, then you're going to actually need to pick out what's right for you based on your circumstances, which usually tends to be the U3. But an important thing to note is, as you can see, especially it's very visible in 2020, is that the U1 is usually a month or two or a little bit more behind the rest of them. So that can potentially mean that it's not your right choice for graph.